Yeah, so today's lecture we're going to be talking about AMD, which is accumulation, manipulation, and distribution. So we got to talk about what is AMD, and this is actually one of my favorite concepts, and I think it's very important in reading price because you can always see this, and it can help us form the higher time frame and lower time frame. So first we got to talk about what is AMD. So AMD, in my opinion, is the most simple structure of price. And you can pair with other components such as time, which will lead us onto the power of 3 in a later video and lecture. But it's my favorite ICT concept of all time, and it breaks down price in 3 different phases. Those phases are, as we said, accumulation, manipulation, and distribution. And what we can use AMD for is as a high time frame narrative. So if we go on a higher time frame, we can frame each session as accumulation, one session as a manipulation, and the second as a distribution, or even pre-market, or maybe just during a shorter time frame. It's really just, it could work at any time. And you could also use it on the low time frame for executions. And I'll show a live example of this happening because there's one forming right now. So what does AMD tell us? Again, we can use the higher time frame to frame the day and lower time frame for our executions. So if you used AMD on a higher time frame, as you guys learned in the previous video, it would look sort of like an MMXM. So you could use that as a model, look for a high time frame AMD, and then on the low time frame, enter off the MMXM. Now let's talk about the 3 phases and how to spot them. The first phase is our accumulation. So during our accumulation, price is just ranging. We haven't really picked a direction. And this is because we are generating liquidity on both sides. So there are both buyers and sellers. We're looking to generate liquidity to later manipulate and take out one side of this range. So we learned about consolidation during MMXM. And then our second phase is our manipulation phase. This is when price takes out one side of the range, and it often tags into a higher time frame fair value gap or draw on liquidity. So a very good tip to confirm manipulation is 1, look for aggressive displacement. We'll talk about displacement more in depth in another video, but essentially all it is a very aggressive move towards whichever direction that forms some fair value gaps. Another tip to confirm manipulation is it tagging into a high time frame PD array. So for example, a 15-minute fair value gap or an hourly fair value gap. Those are very good examples of a valid manipulation. A tip for manipulation as well is to sweep out one side of the range. So for example here, we sweep out all of that sell side liquidity we generated. And then the final tip is to look for an SMT formed. An SMT is like the cherry on top when it comes to finding and confirming manipulations. So if there is an SMT formed at the bottom of the manipulation leg, that already basically gives you an A+ setup. And then the final phase is the distribution, and that is when price rallies towards the other direction and displaces up, setting up our actual move. This is where we want to get the entries, and I'll be talking about how we can find an entry using confirmation tools such as change in state of deliveries and IFVGs. Quick little drawing of AMD. So again, it'll look like this. We get a first phase of accumulation, generating liquidity, take out one side, tapping into a higher time frame PD array or a higher time frame draw on liquidity, and then we get our distribution move. And if this was on the higher time frame, once again, it would look like an MMXM. So let's go down here, and here's a great example. So for this, we must go on a higher time frame. Here. So as you guys see, we go on the 5-minute actually. Yeah, so as you guys see, this would be an example of our AMD. So here we have our accumulation phase. So price is just generating. And then we have our distribution phase, trade right into a higher time frame PD array. And then we also, on this leg, we do have our liquidity sweep. And then we could get our good confirmation on this leg as opposed to this leg, because here we failed to really, if we zoom in, some confirmation tools that we talked about like IFVGs or change in state of deliveries. We didn't really have any of that here. We did have these two IFVGs, but they were a little bit weaker as they barely closed above and then just continued back down. But on this leg, we took out this engineered low. We had a nice IFVG and then also the change in state of delivery. And I did take this trade and I did enter off this change in state of delivery. I believe it was. It might have been the re-entry off this IFVG as well after we had the change in state of delivery. But that is an example of our accumulation, manipulation, and then distribution. And we also do have one forming right now as we speak on the lower time frame. So let's check this one out. So first we have our accumulation. So this is a very large range. And then what do we get after that? Well, we have to look a little bit deeper. We get this aggressive displacement move down. And we did three things actually. We swept out one side of this range. We took out these lows. And not just that, we tagged into this fair value gap, which is a very important point of interest because this is actually a silver bullet entry, which we'll talk about in a later video. But as you see, we got that, and then we immediately start displacing higher. And this is a very good example that is forming live right now. This is a very good example of AMD on the lower time frame. And now let's talk about a higher time frame AMD and how you can use it to form your bias for the day. So right here, this is today's price action. The first thing I noticed is that we did have our accumulation right here. So remember, first thing we want to look for, accumulation, generating liquidity. So we're just ranging here. And then our second phase is our manipulation. We had news, which made it even better. So here we take out one side of the accumulation range. And then if we go down to a lower time frame, we want to look for our entry. So right here, we did have this 15-minute gap that we could have waited for an inversion as a confirmation. Or if we scale down, we get a little bit more of a precise entry. So what can we look for here? Well, this 5-minute inversion right here, actually, perfect. So we inverse this gap. And not only that, we also did have this unfilled 5-minute gap that we manipulated into, confirming our move lower. And also this change in state of delivery. Now you wouldn't have gotten an entry off of here because we did just displace completely lower after our accumulation and manipulation. But as you see, we rallied all the way down here, and then you can see another setup forming right here. So it just goes to show you can really look for this at any time. There's always going to be some type of accumulation, manipulation, and distribution every single day. All three of these examples took place today. And as you can see, we got 3 quality setups. One here, overnight, one here, and then these longs right here. And I'll go over one more example, but that was a great example on how to frame the higher time frame and what we want to do for the day. And this one down here that I showed on the 1 minute is a great example on execution. So I'll show one more example. There is a good high time frame one here actually. So here, first thing that we notice, we have an accumulation phase. So right here, let's mark that out. So after we decided, okay, we have our accumulation, what is the next thing we look for? We look for manipulation, and that being confirmed by aggressive displacement or an SMT. So let's check if there was an SMT here. So there actually was an SMT. If you guys look, NQ did take out these equal lows, but ES did fail to take out those equal lows. So right there, that is our bullish SMT. We'll just mark that. And then after we get that SMT and sweeping out all of this sell side liquidity, which is equal lows, very strong draw, we can scale down the time frames. So boom, we can enter the 5-minute. I'll go on the 1 minute for this one. So after you see that, again, on the 1 minute, we also do get this sweep, and then SMT forms with this low right here. What can we start looking for? We can start looking for our entry triggers. So the first thing I notice is this CISD. It's a little bit too early for my liking, so we can look for something else. What else do we have? We have this fair value gap. And one more thing I just realized is we did actually have another AMD sort of. So right here, we are in an accumulation phase, right as the new 4-hour candle opens, which I'm going to go over the importance of in another video. So right here, we have our accumulation. And then we have our manipulation, taking out this low and forming our SMT. So as you guys see, it really just all comes together. We have one on the higher time frame, and then it also applies to the lower time frame to get our entry. And then right after this, you see the change in state of delivery, fair value gap entry, have your stop at the SMT lows, target these highs or even these highs. And right there, you have your entry model right there in 3 easy steps. And honestly, I believe that pairing AMD with time, which we'll go into in other videos, is one of the most powerful things you can do. Because AMD works on every single time frame. You can use it on the higher time frame to set a very good bias, and then lower time frame for the executions. It is truly fractal. It's one of the best models or concepts I've ever seen taught by ICT. I've been trading it since literally the beginning of my trading journey. It's been the one thing that I've stuck to. And one more tip before we wrap up the video. Standard deviation projections are actually very useful in AMD because we do get that manipulation every single time, which is a perfect place to anchor our standard deviation. This example, only 1 minute, that manipulation leg right there, we can use this to have a target. So for example, up here, or which aligns with this unfilled 15-minute gap, which is a great target. So that's all there is to AMD, honestly. You just look for your accumulation, manipulation into a PD array, taking out a draw on liquidity, maybe forming an SMT, and then your distribution phase, which is where you would look for your entry model. So that's all there is to this lecture. I hope you guys found it useful, and I hope you guys understood with the examples that I gave. It is very powerful. If there was one thing I recommend you add to your trading, it would be AMD, because it is extremely powerful. I love it. It just makes the most sense out of anything. It happens every single day. I could probably go on this chart and continue marking out AMDs that have happened. And yeah, you can just add whatever confluences you want to it. Like, there's nothing specific to look for your entries or anything. You just look for the AMD and then enter however you want to. So that is it for this lecture and video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments or join the Discord server.